All right, this video will compare ionic and molecular compounds. So, looking at properties. So the state of an ionic compound are solids. They tend to be solids, in fact form crystals, whereas molecular compounds can be in any of these three states. Reason being is that ionic compounds form ions, so they can not be a gas or liquid because of the type of bonding that's occurring there. Color. Ionic compounds tend to be mostly white, but molecular compounds can be clear liquids or gases or white solids, and they're not necessarily white. Ionic compounds are hard and brittle, whereas molecular compounds are relatively soft. Melting points. Ionic compounds and boiling points tend to be relatively high, and molecular compounds tend to be relatively slow. Let's just think about a compound, like I'm giving these examples or these properties. Think about table salt. Okay, when you think about these properties, you can't melt table salt, and a molecular compound would be sugar. You can actually burn sugar. So think of, when you're trying to remember the properties, think about sugar for a molecular compound and think about salt for an ionic compound. Solubility in water. And because water is polar, like dissolves like, so ionic compounds are almost polar in nature, so they will be very miscible in water, whereas molecular compounds can be poor to good. So it's not a very good indicator if it's a molecular compound if it dissolves in water, because you can't tell specifically for that one. But the electrical conductivity can. In the solid phase, neither one conducts, but the ionic compound will conduct in the molten or liquid, if it's dissolved in water. But molecular compounds will not. You could put sugar in water and it will not light up a light bulb, but salt would. So let's look at the nature of bonds with ionic and molecular compounds. So ionic compounds are formed from metals and nonmetals, whereas molecular compounds are formed from nonmetals and nonmetals. Electronegativity for ionic is greater than 1.7. For molecular, if it's nonpolar, it's 0, and if it's polar, it's greater than 0 to 1.7. What particle is formed? With ionic compounds, you form ions. With molecular compounds, you form molecules. What about the strength of bond? Ionic compounds are stronger than their molecular compound counterparts. And a couple examples, although there are many, as I gave you, sodium chloride, copper 2 sulfate would be another example of an ionic compound. And molecular compound, water, carbon dioxide, methane, and I also mentioned sugar, C12H22O11. That's your table sugar. Sucrose. There are many kinds of sugar, many kinds. You know about glucose too, C6H12O6. Might as well write that one too. Okay, so those are some comparisons of ionic and molecular compounds.